Hi folks, John Dunn here, RPG freelancer, publisher behind Melior Via. I am up here with Mikey at Immortals Inc. tonight.
What is up, John? It is a marvelous evening, and why is that?
Well, it is always a good time when we're up here.
It is.
But, you know, I like talking spooky, and we got a good spooky book to talk about tonight.
We got a theme going.
You know, we do that a lot.
A lot.
You know, I clearly have a love for the horror genre.
85% of our videos, maybe?
Tonight, I wanted to talk about Stay Alive. This is a book that was a product of a 2018 Kickstarter. It's for the Cypher System. We talked about the Cypher System a little bit recently when we did Shotguns and Sorcery.
Protect the dragon at all costs.
Absolutely.
Not even that. Dragon protects you, right?
Kinda, yeah. Cypher System is a game system put out by Monty Cook Games. They used it originally for Numenera and The Strange, and then spun it off as its own system. And in 2018, they did a Kickstarter to do just kind of a cleaned up, expanded version of the Cypher System core rulebook. And they did a bunch of genre books as part of that as well. They did, like I said, the revised core. They did a sci-fi source book, a fantasy source book, a fairy tale source book, and Stay Alive, their horror source book. So the lead writer on this is Sean K. Reynolds. He's a guy that's done an awful lot of work in the RPG industry, quite a bit with Monty Cook Games, but he's also done a lot of stuff for Paizo, primarily on their Pathfinder line, if memory serves. This book is really focused on talking about horror and different tricks and tools you can use to incorporate that into the Cypher System. We've talked about genre books for other systems in the past. I know specifically we talked about the Space book for Fate Core. Do you remember that one, Mikey?
Yeah, I think so. Was it? You said it was Fate driven?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a while back.
It was like the purple.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
purple space.
So this is the same kind of conceptual book as that, where you've got a rule system that can do a whole lot of different things, and this just kind of focuses in on that. So if you want to do a Cypher System game with a horror bent to it, this book is going to give you a whole lot of different options, different ways to do that. Now, some of these rules you could introduce just if you wanted to do a couple of horror game sessions instead of a whole campaign, and other ones might fit into a campaign with a different theme that has the potential for going into horror. You know, for instance, if you're doing a dark fantasy game where you want to have horrific monsters as an element of it, you might want to consider some of these as options.
It's like a preset. You just plop it right there, you know?
Exactly, yeah, where you've got your different tweaks that you can do to the system, your different checkboxes that you can go through and find different things that might be a good fit. The book's 224 pages. It is a full color hardcover, so there's quite a bit of content here, and the illustrations are pretty awesome throughout, as you'd kind of expect for something coming out of Monty Cook. The first 130 pages of it are all about horror world building. So creating your campaign setting that builds off of those horror elements. So there's a discussion of different styles of horror. Do you have a particular favorite that you like?
My vibe's always been Quentin Tarantino. He doesn't make really horror films, so I'm not a horror guy. You know what I mean?
All right.
Quentin Tarantino guy.
I mean, Aliens. Something you dig?
I'm more of like a gore
slasher
guy. Like zombie flicks.
Zombie flicks, that's absolutely.
Zombie flicks like Shaun of the Dead, those like nice little comedic ones and stuff like that.
That's always a good time.
Yeah, but like horror itself has always been that genre.
Even the cover of the book kind of does the zombie thing pretty
does.
Explicitly with all the hands reaching out there.
But zombies.
Yeah.
In short, zombies.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm like Carlos, you know, zombies. And Cthulhu, but not Cthulhu.
Fair. And then it talks about the different sources you might want to draw from when you're doing a horror book. The who, the what, the where, the why, the when. Basically, the different elements that are going to get into that. And it's got some random tables to kind of set you up if you're, you know, just itching for an idea or trying to figure out how to make things fit together. Sometimes that's the thing you need. There is a nice section on consent. So, you know, give your players a chance to go through and say, no, I absolutely do not want to do the horror scenario with the millions of creepy, crawly things that are, you know, getting into bed with me. That doesn't sound like a good thing to me.
Not really pleasant.
People have different quakes, and it, you know, kind of says, make sure you run it past the players first, or let the players know what they don't. Let the players let you, as the game master, know what they don't want to have to deal with during the game.
Like I said, we got to normalize that. I remember the other game system we talked about that had the similar
Yeah, there's been a few, and I really do think that's an important thing to bring up, really, anytime you're setting up a campaign. Then it gives you some plot ideas for adventures, campaigns, really diving into the why of the, 5 W's that I mentioned, particularly how the player characters are going to interact with it, whether they're, hunters of some sort that are going out deliberately to confront monstrosity, whether they might be the survivors of a past experience, or, just the random people who happen to encounter the horrific entity. There's 12 pages of short essays on different game master, but also player advice for how to really get into and enjoy and contribute well to a horror-themed role-playing game. Then there's a bunch of genre and monster breakdowns in here, and that's actually a big chunk of this, about 48 pages, where it talks about different types of monsters and what you might want to do with them and what genres of horror they fit into well.
I mean, you kind of need that for...
Yeah, it's instrumental, right? And there's going to be some mixing and matching there when you're putting together your game world. You might want to draw from more than one of them, or you might look at one of them and say, you know what, this would fit better for my campaign over here. And that's totally valid. And then there's a section on horror mechanics, basically rules, twists, like I mentioned, those different dials and switches you might want to flip or bring into your game that might not necessarily even be horror focused, but where these could be a good fit for expanding your options. There are Cypher shorts, and that's basically 3 one-shot 2-page adventures that you could pretty much just run straight off using this system. Some creatures and NPCs, about 13 different write-ups of those, and then some horror ciphers. Ciphers are those single-use items that really are kind of key to the strange in the Cypher system. And then 12 different cursed items that are horror artifacts. After all of that, that's that 130 pages that I talked about world building. It gets into one very specific focused campaign setting, and that is their Masters of the Night campaign. Now, we've talked about doing Cleveland by Night here at Immortals, right? And that is very clearly a vampire-esque setting. Mm-hmm. Well, Masters of the Night is a vampire-focused setting that is outlined in detail here in those last 85-ish pages, where the player characters are newly created vampires. And so it gives you rules for creating vampire player characters in here, some rules for vampire flaws and different powers that they could have access to, and then basically an NPC setup for how you might want to transform your town into one that happens to be infested with vampires, because, hey, I don't know about you, I don't really want to live in a town that's infested by vampires, but I enjoy thinking about what our town might be like if it were controlled by them.
It wouldn't be ideal,
It probably would not be ideal.
Would they lean more towards the vigilante aspect, or would they just be all-out bloodsuckers?
Well, if our current political environment is any indication, I'm going to go with the latter.
Yeah.
So after that, there is an intro adventure and 3 follow-on adventures, and it works out to be about 40 pages of adventure content there that you can use to get that campaign going and intersperse things and really give your players a chance to explore the city from the perspective of the newly created vampires. After that, there's some cards, there's a checklist, a reference, and an index. And the index is actually pretty comprehensive. So if you're into the Cypher system, or you're just looking for, a toolkit of different horror options, you might want to check this out. We do have it up here on the shelf at Immortals Inc. It is a hardcover, full color, 224 pages from Monty Cook Games for the Cypher system. Stay Alive by Sean K. Reynolds. And it is $50. Available here on the shelf or online at immortalsinc.com.
That was smooth. It wasn't even written down.
Till next time, folks. Good gaming.
Bye.